By now, you know all about the theory of natal lunar cycles, and we've also covered the biological mechanisms of ovulation. We know that progesterone we release after ovulation stops us from releasing any further eggs. We know that ovulation is a single 24-hour hormonal event that occurs once per menstrual cycle. But you'll have noticed that proponents of the natal lunar cycles theory often point towards scientific proof that confirms double ovulations. So let's look at their evidence. Do the studies actually say what they think they say? The main study they refer to is by a research team led by Dr. Roger Pierson out of the University of Saskatchewan in Canada. It's titled A New Model for Ovarian Follicular Development During the Human Menstrual Cycle. Previously, it was hypothesized that humans had a single wave of follicles that would start to grow in their ovaries at the end of each menstrual cycle. One of these would become dominant and ovulate, while the rest would regress and die away. Pierson and his team reported some fascinating findings. They followed 50 women from one ovulation to the next ovulation, and they refer to this time span as the interovulatory interval. They found that women actually experienced 2 or 3 waves of follicle development during each interovulatory interval. Essentially, they noticed 1 or 2 waves of follicle growth during the luteal phase after ovulation had already passed. Now, here's where people misconstrue these findings. Multiple waves of follicular growth does not mean multiple ovulations. So the follicles themselves are growing. But remember, unless that follicle bursts open to release an egg, then ovulation has not occurred. In fact, Pierson and his team emphasize multiple times within their paper that only the final wave of follicle growth was ovulatory. All preceding waves during the luteal phase were anovulatory. That is, ovulation did not occur. Not only that, but they emphasized that all of the anovulatory waves resulted in follicles that were smaller than those in the ovulatory wave of growth. At the time, the research by Dr. Pierson was so misconstrued in the media that he sat down for an interview with the University of Saskatchewan's own on-campus newspaper, where he's quoted as saying, "That story claimed women ovulate 2 or 3 times a month, and that's simply not true." So, by now you may be thinking, okay, so the literature that these people point to does not say that multiple ovulation is a thing, but it does tell us that we have these multiple waves of follicle growth during our luteal phase. What's to stop one of those follicles somehow suddenly ovulating? Well, I'm glad you're thinking critically, and here's why that's not something you need to worry about. As we've already established, progesterone completely suppresses any further surges of luteinizing hormone from the brain. So even if those follicles did get to ovulatory size, the brain can't tell them to ovulate. But here's the really reassuring part. We have a 2007 paper out of Germany that studied users of the Symptothermal Method. The Symptothermal Method is a highly scientific form of cycle tracking where users track cervical mucus and basal body temperature, and they make specific calculations to identify fertile and infertile days of their menstrual cycle. This 2007 study was a long-running prospective clinical trial. It followed 900 women over around 20 years for a total of 17,638 menstrual cycles. The Symptothermal Method was proven 99.6% effective for contraception when used correctly. Not only this, but there was not a single unintended pregnancy recorded from intercourse in the luteal phase after confirmed ovulation. Not a single one. These results would simply not be possible if Dr. Jonas's theory of a natal lunar cycles had a single shred of credibility. Because if what Dr. Jonas says is true, then there would have been many instances of multiple ovulations across those 17,638 menstrual cycles, and there would have been many more unintended pregnancies recorded if that was the case. And you know what? That simply did not happen because natal lunar cycles has been proven over and again to have no basis in reality. In addition to this, some of the authors of that 2007 German study, along with other prominent voices in the contraceptive effectiveness research world, also authored a response to the media storm of Dr. Pierson's research back in 2004. At the time, they emphasized, "We point out that the bulk of evidence suggests that a second ovulation does not play any clinical role in natural cycles. Among more than 30,000 cycles in users of modern natural family planning methods studied at the research center in Dusseldorf, no pregnancy occurred when intercourse took place during the luteal phase.